We are back for episode 86 of the Owl Triangle podcast. As always, I am joined by the two lads, Caoilte de Barra, Andy Stevenson. We're here to break down all the latest news in Irish mixed martial arts. We have Denis Frimpong on as a guest. We'll get to Denis a little bit later on. We have lots of action to kind of break down, action that was spread out right across Europe. Before we get into the action, I want to have a word here from part-time political analyst Andy Stevenson on who went to war this weekend on Twitter. Andy, how are you doing? Congratulations to you, sir. I say that in jest. It's a joke. I want to legit wish you a happy birthday and a happy
thank you very much.
Happy first wedding anniversary too. It's all go in the Stevenson household this weekend.
Thanks very much. It was my second anniversary, but that's okay. I mean, wow.
Sorry, man.
Just fake news, O'Neill.
I'm not married to you, so I can get it.
That's fair enough. Yeah, 35, feeling good, I have to say. 35. Thought I was going to be freaking out.
I can't believe it's 2 years since your wedding. Like, fucking hell. Like,
yeah.
I'm close to 1 year myself, so that's why you kind of we were lined up a little bit.
Yeah, I figured why not spend my birthday arguing with people about politics on the internet?
It's great.
And we'll have Tom Egan on later today on the podcast.
Indeed.
Famed MMA fighter Tom Egan, yeah.
Indeed. Caoilte, are you keeping well, my friend? You're out and about traveling the weekend yourself?
Oh yeah, back home. So I've been away from everything, came back and heard about Andy's Twitter antics. But so Andy, look, Cade Mila Fall share the podcast. You know, it's always good to have you on.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. But no, happy birthday.
I was thinking, should we get rid of these immigrants like Ian O'Neill?
Hey, come on.
I think it's time we get him out of here.
Come on.
Oh god.
Oh, stop! I won't even get into that. I'm going to sway people. Talking of people traveling to different countries, we had lots of Irish fighters that traveled to different countries to compete this past weekend. And since we've last been on, obviously we're going to talk about James Gallagher's fight. Nikolai Grozdev was out at WOW. We had some action over at UAE Warriors as well. With Omran Chaaban, Fufu Fares, who was making his pro debut, Elias Buliad as well. Lots of fights going on in different areas, which kind of stems a conversation that we kind of wanted to chat about at the start off this podcast, is the current landscape for an Irish mixed martial arts fighter, and routes to where they want to go. Obviously, you know, there's the conversation, lads, that we can have where, you know, what's the best route for a fighter with an organization? Do you want to go to the UFC? Do you want to go the PFL route? Even before that, do you go through Cage Warriors? Do you fight on the regional scene? Do you fight out in European MMA events as well, which we have seen a few fighters do over the last couple of years? And it's an interesting time, Sandy, you know, with the MMA landscape. And, you know, I think it more so in the past has been, you know, the kind of common denominator has been the route to the UFC. What's the route to get to the UFC? So, you know, the UFC isn't the be all and end all either. You know, we see the common trend with the UFC now is, you know, you're going on to Dana White's Contender Series, and, you know, it's not, you know, back in the day, it was the kind of mentality is that, you know, you made it to the UFC and you made it. That's it. You made the big time. But, you know, we've seen some people go to the UFC and kind of struggle. You know, financially, it's not always what it used to be. I think the gateway into it has gotten a little bit more difficult now. And we've seen other fighters that chose different routes. I mean, you know, my example would be Paul Hughes, who chose the PFL route and you know, obviously has its financial benefits. You know, he's got the chance to fight in the big stadium show or big, you know, arena show in Belfast as well. And it raises an interesting topic, Andy, really, on, you know, what is the best route? You know, it's a broad question to throw at you there, I guess. But, you know, what is the best route? Because we're seeing various fighters going in a couple of different directions in recent times. And, you know, the overall MMA landscape has changed.
Yeah, bluntly, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answers to what the best route is. Like, you know, could have answered it 5 years ago, but I think things have changed. I think what we're seeing, as you said there, is, from what I can see, is fighters are now just going out there trying to get as many wins as they can and make as much noise as they can and be readily available for the UFC. We're not seeing the same volume of fighters from this part of the world getting brought on straight in. It's obviously we've talked about this last, like the Contender Series is the overwhelming route now. Like I'd say if you were to look at, I know it's Alzolino and the guys that came put the stats you'll see on Twitter and stuff like that, where I'd say the vast majority of fighters in the UFC today are probably have come through the Contender Series route, or at least a significant portion compared to 5-10 years ago. So like we've had a lot of fighters competing over the past couple of weeks. You see the likes of Nikola Grozdev over winning titles, and you see Omran Chaaban, he's already previously won the UAE Warriors title, fighting again there. You have Paddy McCarry not too long ago picking up a big win and on Cage Warriors, this type of stuff. So it's there's no clear cut like, oh yeah, you do this and then you get your call up. That doesn't exist anymore, in my opinion. And I don't think that Cage Warriors is the same route that it once was as far as getting to the UFC. I think it's still there is a pathway through there for sure, but I don't think it's like at one point in time it was the route. It was the beacon of European MMA where you get that title, and it really meant something to get that title. I think it still does to an extent, but like even in the standalone products across it, not just Cage Warriors, like let's say you win a title in WoW, or you win a title in UAE Warriors, you win a title in Cage Warriors, in name X promotion in Europe.
It was their ticket, wasn't it?
Well, what does it mean anymore? Like, it
doesn't mean anything anymore. I don't. It means no. I shouldn't say it doesn't mean anything. It means something to the fighter that goes and wins and maybe wants to become a Cage Warriors champion or a PFL champion or whatever champion in whatever organization that you're in. But I mean, it's not your golden ticket to the UFC anymore. Is I guess what way I should have described it.
It's often as well it's the unknowns of, like, I feel like more often than not, it's not established fighter in X promotion versus other established fighter in X promotion, and there's kind of a build towards something which you can kind of wrap your head around and be like, oh, this is what this means. Like when Hughes and Charrier and Vucenic, for example, in Cage Warriors, and again, just going back to that promotion because it's what we know probably best. You knew exactly, you followed all these guys that were kind of culminating and colliding, and were fighting each other multiple times, and like that was the pinnacle. Whereas now I just see. I don't know. I've more questions than I have answers.
Yeah,
is the answer there?
It is, but we maybe are putting a negative spin on it, and there is some negatives, there is some positives. It's good to have choices, but I think Caoilte, when we were talking about getting to the big dance, which would be the UFC, we've experienced it. I think the perfect example would be someone like Danny McCormack, who had to go through lots of terms and conditions. From what we heard from Danny, it was like they want fighters under the age of a certain age. They want undefeated fighters. If you're undefeated and you're winning decisions, you're not good enough, because we want undefeated fighters that are finishing fights as well. Where it was like, I think, as a guy who followed people's paths through the amateur ranks into the professional ranks to get into the big stage as well, I feel from looking at the sport for a long time, we've gone from going with a fighter who's just good enough. If you're good enough for the UFC, you're good enough for the UFC. But now you can be good enough for the UFC, and it still might not be enough if you don't meet a certain level of criteria as well.
I completely agree. And like, it's not just ability anymore. It's all these other factors that includes if you have a big name. If you have a big name in the country, that's going to stand to you more than, and you might not be as talented as someone else, but there's a higher chance you're going to get an opportunity if you're a big name than someone who may be a lot better than you, but isn't, maybe not has, I don't want to say Instagram followers, but maybe not have the hype, if you know what I mean.
It'd be more marketability, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think management comes into it too. I think there's so many different variables. I do think management's a big thing there as well, because managers, they be knocking on the door at these people constantly. They're the ones who get your name out there, and having those contacts, a lot of it who as well, having those contacts is very, very important. And between meeting the criteria, having all these things checked off as well, and then on top of that, having your record almost flawless is what we seem to kind of see being the common case nowadays of what you need to be to have the UFC, and finishes. So you're dealing with all these variables that weren't really there before. Before it was who's the best, you go forward. And it must be a nightmare for fighters, because now there is no, as what we're talking about, there's no defined path anymore. And I think some of it comes down to, if you have those in order, and if you fight in somewhere that, I guess, I don't want to say tailor-made, but if it works for you to build a name, to garner experience, and to get more exposure. Because if you're on cards that are saturated full of other, let's say, Irish fighters or other prospects, you might not get noticed as quickly as if you're in somewhere that really think you're a star. Let's say WoW, for example. If they think you're a star in WoW, you're going to be the poster boy. You're the one that's going to be seen. You're the hype is going to be massive around you. The exposure of that then being someone on the prelims of something like Cage Warriors, for example. The difference is starch, and that'll be vary, and it's going to be different for every single fighter. I think the routes are so broad now, and the routes are so broad, and actually taking the time to look at your path and where you can go is important. I think is a big factor fighters are looking at and need to look at moving forward if they do want to fight in the UFC.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I turned the question to you, Andy, and it was a difficult question because it is hard to know. Because who are we to say what's the best route for anybody? But it's not all about the UFC too. At the same time, I feel, if we take, I use the example of Paul Hughes. I also use the example of Will Fleury as well, and what he has built for himself in a promotion like Oktagon as well. And those are all viable paths that fighters can go down as well. If the UFC, obviously, look, there's a choice that you can go to another organization and get paid more money, or you can go to the UFC where you might have to sacrifice a little bit, you might have to bet on yourself a little bit. But if you go to the UFC and you're successful over a period of time, it benefits you in the long run, maybe financially. But it's interesting kind of conversation.
Exposure as well, like the UFC at the end of the day, like, I personally think the UFC product is diminishing.
100% it is.
But the exposure, like that it can give you on a worldwide scale, that you can then use if you're smart, and if you can get maybe, and albeit it's incredibly difficult these days with the constraints around fighters and sponsorships when you're in, say, Fight Week or on your apparel and things like that. But if you can get sponsors like outside of that, and build gyms or whatever off the back of being a UFC fighter, that's really, I suppose, where you can make more money. But like, I think it's going to be interesting. And again, like to when you ask me the question, I don't have the answer. I'm just speculating, and I'm just kind of giving my read on things at the moment. But like, I think this summer will be very interesting, because I think that there is a crop of fighters coming out of Ireland and coming out of the UK and Europe generally, where there's a lot of lads who kind of very least call for like a shot on Contender Series, which seems to be the route these days. That's coming up very soon, so it'll be interesting to see which fighters do get the call, because like, if you look back, and again, kind of, it's an easy example to kind of call back to, like that featherweight run in Cage Warriors, where it was Hughes and Charrier and Vucenic, and even James Hendon, like they were all fighting each other, and they were all going to decisions. But the quality of fights, the level of fighters, the level of skill, the level of experience that they were all getting from that, I thought was fucking brilliant. And it was incredibly entertaining to watch. But are we now in a era where the powers that be are saying is, we just care about finishes, or we want to see finishers? It's like, well, right, you can go out and fight, Joe Bloggs, who's 3-4 or 5-2 or something that nobody really knows. No, and his wins have come on a regional scene in a country that maybe isn't as experienced, or hasn't had as much of experience in MMA. And that's supposed to mean that that's a better win than fighting a guy who is a proven commodity and will push it to your limit, and okay, the fight may go to a decision, but like, it's two really solid guys against each other. That doesn't make sense to me, but that seems to be kind of where we're at right now. And I think that a lot of fighters don't know which way to go, and are probably taking one fight deals, which is probably smart right now. And just trying to figure out, okay, what is a route that can get me there? And now we will see, I think, in the next couple of months, which of those and what the defining factors are that the promotion are looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Like, look, you mentioned a trio of athletes there, and that was Paul Hughes, Vucenic, and Morgan Charrier, right? All came through similar periods and are all on the same kind of career trajectory. But let's take those three guys, right? Let's take Vucenic and Morgan Charrier and where they are and what they've done in the UFC, and being very successful there. But when you compare that to what they are in, where they're at in their career and what they've done so far, anyway, in comparison to someone like Paul Hughes, who was in the same kind of trajectory as them, who chose the PFL route. You know, if you were to pick all three of those guys, who's doing the best out of all three right now? Well, to me, it's hands down Paul Hughes in terms of, you know, the finances that he's making and also the overall worldwide reach that he's been able to achieve. Now, it doesn't all, that's probably the best example to give to somebody who doesn't chose the UFC route. It doesn't always work out that way for certain fighters as well. But, you know, very interesting times indeed, eh?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Paul the next while, given that, I mean...
I said it, I don't want to be right on this, lads. I do not want to be right on this, but I was actually talking with Sean. I think we did a Chase and Pack on Patreon last week, and I said it to him, and I said, I have an awful feeling that Nurmagomedov is going to head on over to the UFC because Islam has moved up. And I hope this doesn't happen because I think that's the fight that should happen. Look, I mean, worst case scenario, Paul Hughes is fighting for a vacant lightweight title in the PFL, but I think, you know, the competitor that we know Paul is, he doesn't want to fight for the title that way. He wants to beat the guy who's holding the title. And I think, you know, it'd be a crying shame if that wasn't to happen. But how are we feeling about that right now? Are we confident it's going to happen, or?
I don't know. Like, I mean, like, they're putting out tweets that are saying that it's the winner of Archie Colgan and what's her name? Say
Mansour Barnwa.
Mansour Barnwi or something.
Barnwi, yeah, Barnwa. Yeah.
Who I believe is currently under investigation for
alleged domestic abuse and rape. Yeah.
So that, which is just bizarre. And then I saw this mind-boggling video of Jonathan Coachman where Donna Corby from Bloody Elbow is asking him basically about this, like, what's the story here with Hughes not getting the fight, and he's like, oh, what are you talking, like, basically kind of, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially calling it fake news, despite it coming from a tweet put out by the PFL. So, like, it's just there's a lot of confusion right now. I don't know why he. I'm going to go on an anti-PFL rant here. I don't know why he
take the reins
there. Like every single week, there's a new frontman of this organization, and maybe I believe they're trying different things out, but like it's just causing absolute chaos and confusion, and it seems like there's no cohesion within the promotion as to their decision making. So when you have the literal biggest fight that you could make, and fair enough, like, Archie Colgan's on a great run right now. Like, from a sporting merit, you can absolutely, you know, call for the argument that he deserves a shot. But this is just bizarre. It's the best fight they've ever put on. Hughes goes out, has a phenomenal performance in Belfast, a homecoming moment, A+ performance. Albeit, okay, you know, maybe he's not the ideal opponent, but there's a lack of choice for the ideal opponent considering they're all wrapped up in a tournament format. Then there's the confusion of, I thought it's just the tournament champion faces the winner or the title holder, which in itself is a little bit confusing. But now you're also saying two guys who are not in the tournament are now going to compete for the next number one shot, despite Paul being there. So why would one of those not have fought Paul in Belfast, for example, if there was confusion over who is the next in line? That would make logical sense to me. So this whole thing is just a complete mess. And how do I feel about it? I feel that we're going to end up in a situation, and I'm being pessimistic here maybe, that we're not going to get this fight, and we are going to see Usman Nurmagomedov move on to the UFC once his contract is up, and then the biggest fight, the biggest rematch that they could possibly have in the history of their promotion, which would actually command worldwide attention and be a, you know, top of the range fight, just slips through their fingers because of reasons unknown. Maybe it's Usman doesn't want the fight from it, you know, which, if you're looking at the angle to go to the UFC, well, why would you take a high risk fight when you can take it? Maybe
you don't want to go in, if you're going to go down the UFC route, and like obviously contracts have to play into an effect here as well. You know, what way do you kind of see this whole you know, sequence of events that's played out this year? And there was not one thing that came out your mouth there, Andy, that I could disagree with. I think it's a shit show, but PFL are a shit show at the best of times. It's like they make a couple of good decisions and then follow them by a couple of ridiculous decisions and create a lot of confusion. Like, this number one contender seems like it's a number one contender to be the number one contender. And why would you fucking announce that fight before, or why would you make a big deal about that fight before even, you know, mentioning that about anything about Paul Hughes or Nurmagomedov or the rematch? It just doesn't make any sense to me as well, Caoilte. What about yourself? Can you make any sense of this nonsense at all?
No, I think from the top level of the PFL, it's always just confusing constantly. Like you mentioned there, you've got number one contender for a number one contender. You've got Paul Hughes, who's the number one contender in the title, and whoever wins the tournament is the number one contender. It's like, what happens then? Do I think the fight actually happens? I like to be a bit of an optimist and say yes, but sometimes we can't have nice things, especially in MMA, or quite a lot. We can't have nice things in MMA. And I think a lot of the reasons with that when it comes to PFL is at the top level, when it comes to the best, their top talent that are kind of, they could turn into superstars or are superstars in a lot of the cases. I don't think they manage them exactly very well. Like Kayla Harrison left. Dakota Cheva seemed, I didn't know what was going on with her for a little while. She's got a fight, and they seem to win a tournament, and then there's not really...
There's no plan, Caoilte.
No, there's no plan.
There's no plan for anything. It's just like, here we have this. The only plan that they have is for the tournament events. And even they don't always work out the plan when you take in for injuries. But it seems everything outside of that. There's no plan really, isn't there not?
No, there's no plan, especially at the top level. There's no plan. It's like you reach this pinnacle of a tournament, and that's it. Francis Ngannou signed this massive superstar, and look, I have no idea what's kind of happened there. You know, he had the boxing stint, and is he going to fight for them? Is he not? You know, there's all this. What I will say is the
problem with Francis Ngannou, just on a side chance, if you're going to make him fight again, you have to remember the contract that he signed, which is almost a 10 million guarantee to step inside of the cage. Do they have the money to pay that man that kind of money?
Plus 2 for his opponent, right?
Plus 2 for his opponent as well. It's like,
you know,
obviously a plan that wasn't fucking thoroughly thought out either at the same time too. It's like, jeez.
Can I give him a little bit of credit though? I think this is what I'm saying here is about, I guess, the top tier. There's no plan at the very top for building stars from the emerging talent and turning them into, I guess, stars and giving them opportunities. I think they do a good job of that. Personally,
they give us glimpses of fucking brilliance. Yes. And they I think Dan Hardy is fantastic in the role that he is in there, as far as being on the European side, being able to position fighters as to why people should care about them. I think he does a brilliant job of that, and of scouting talent and of matchmaking and things like that. And I thought that they did a fucking fantastic job with Belfast as far as making that feel special. The night itself. Obviously they shot themselves in the foot by not having it on a US broadcast, but it seemed like that was all framed around Paul Hughes, the star. Paul Hughes, he's after coming off this loss for the world title, he's got to get back on the win, call him, and then he calls out Usman Nurmagomedov to set up the rematch. They knocked it out of the park with that, and Paul obviously delivered in a humongous way because he did the heavy lifting there. But that's such a positive thing that they do, to then, one, not have a broadcast in the US, and two, now it's like, well, what was that for? So if you're not going to make this fight, what the fuck was the point in all that talk about, oh, this is Hughes to get back to the Usman Nurmagomedov rematch? So that just... And
the reality of the situation is that the power is in the PFL's hands here. Like they're the shot callers here. It's not Paul Hughes and it's not Nurmagomedov here. You know, obviously Nurmagomedov has the title, but there has to come a conversation where it's like, look at, you know, Paul Hughes is your next challenger. You're either going to accept that fight, or you're going to relinquish the title, or maybe even create an interim title. Like, I mean, the only positive that I can think out of the Paul Hughes and Usman fight not happening would be that you have a big opportunity here to bring a world title fight back to Belfast. And you can go there again. You can draw the crowd in. You could have Paul fighting there. You know, he wants to fight Nurmagomedov, obviously, but, you know, let's think of the counterpoint here. If that doesn't happen, or if Nurmagomedov goes off to the UFC, you know, Paul is the obvious, you know, first guy that you would put in there in a title fight if it was to be a vacant one, or if an interim one was taken. But, you know, I don't even know whether Paul wants that. I think Paul is very clear about what he wants, and that's that rematch. And I think that's what he should get too. But look at it, man. I'm blue in the face here from talking about PFL because it's frustrating. Like, it's one step.
We've taken a mad side turn, haven't we?
Yeah. But whatever. It is what it is.
We'll all be blocked by John Davis after this.
Yeah, exactly. But look at, fuck him. Let him block us if we want. Like, if you're afraid of listening to a few home shoots, that's your problem. It's not mine anyway. And it shouldn't be either yours either. It's like this. We're not trying to shit on the PFL. I think what we're trying to express is a level of frustration that you know, we wanted a promotion like PFL to do the right thing, because it's important to have promotions like PFL out there being able to provide a living and being able to put on fights. But when you make one idiotic mistake after the other and you blow a load of money, you know, the business model isn't sustainable. And then, you know, we're in even a worse situation then when there's no avenues for up and coming Irish fighters or fighters across the world to have a platform to showcase their abilities too. So, you know, that's where my anger and frustration comes from that. You know, it's like you have a good opportunity here to do the right thing and run an organization in the right way, but they make a handful of good decisions and a colossal amount of egregiously bad decisions after the fact as well. Like fucking the coach, man. Who the fuck? If it's what did he say? If it ain't true if it hasn't come from me. When have you ever made a fucking decision that benefits or relates to the PFL? It's like you're just a spokesperson, man. You know what I mean? It's laughable. It's laughable. But anyway, that's the serious side tangent to bring us full circle, boys. I mean, we brought this out because we had an array of Irish stars that were fighting right across Europe. And let's go over to Dubai first and talk about 971 FC. As we had James Gallagher, who defeated Fabrizio Soares via submission via armbar. A good performance by James, a solid finish. It's, you know, exactly what he wants. He's back into the win column there. You know, and, you know, it's exactly what he needs. It's, I think, you know, the result and the fight itself is one thing. It was great to see him back out there. I'm not surprised to see him go out there and get an easy win like he did. I always felt about, it's nice for James to get this done, but what's next, Andy? What were your thoughts on the performance to finish and maybe what might be next for the Jimmy Show?
Yeah, I mean, just good to see him back competing. He's based out in Dubai, I believe, full time now, training, and he was like James Gallagher was an absolute flag bearer for Ireland and for Bellator for so long, and I feel like now we are in a spot where we haven't seen him on these Irish shows in a long time. He's obviously no longer with Bellator/PFL. So I'd be curious to know what he's looking for. I saw a lot of kind of comments and stuff about maybe pushing for UFC. I saw we were chatting just before we started recording there. Caoilte, you were saying that there was a post, I think it's like the British MMA scene on Instagram had put up around Harry Hardwick, kind of calling him out or at least expressing interest in fighting James Gallagher on the Contender Series. So it's gonna. I want to see James Gallagher competing regularly. I feel like we've seen him fighting very infrequently over the last couple of years. He had a fight last year against Leandro Higo, obviously a supremely talented fighter, March of 2024. Prior to that, it was August 2023 against James Gonzalez. And then there was a 2-year gap dating back to 2021 that lost to Patchy Mix in Dublin. So we've only seen him really compete three times in the past 4 years, essentially. That's what we're talking. They're all close to 4 years. So we got to start seeing James competing actively. He's no longer I'd say he's no longer the young upcoming fighter. He's still only 28, so he still is very much young. But like, this is, I suppose, a new era in his career. The Bellator chapter is now over, and this one's only been written. So, you know, look, this 971 show, I've no idea if that will continue. It's obviously a Dubai-based show. I believe 971 is formerly MTK MMA. So I don't know what this show will be or where it will go. It's only its second. Show, so let's see where James ends up. But I want to see him competing regularly, and I'm interested in James Gallagher's career because he's been one of the most fascinating fighters that Ireland has produced, and one of the most popular fighters that Ireland has produced. And he was very, very good during that Bellator run where he was consistently subbing lads in the first round. He's after getting another submission here, breaking a guy's arm in the second round. So clearly a very skilled fighter still. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for him. But I don't know what that will be, but I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, me too. I think there are a couple of different avenues that James could go. I know, Caoilte, you had mentioned the George Hardwick fight on Dana White's Contender Series, you know, which is a great fight, a fascinating fight for both guys. Is that a route you'd like to see James take?
Yeah, I like the idea. It's Harry Hardwick. Sorry, I was looking at the post there.
Oh, Harry.
Yeah, like I'd love that fight. I think it'd be very good. But that'd be a decent route. I think he'd kind of suit the Dana White Contender Series. I think he'd suit the UFC just in terms of being able to, he'd bring a crowd. He's got a great CV for and lots of finishes. He's proven himself. I think more than anything right now, just want to see him active. It's great to see him back in there, rolling back the years with an armbar. I don't think he's had an armbar win since the amateur days. We know how good he is on the mat, and he's shown it once again. So, yeah, I'd like to see the Dana White Contender Series, but I wouldn't be against it if he just had a few other fights outside the UFC or Dana White Contender Series, and then go
Oktagon?
directly in.
What about Oktagon, lads? I mean,
right.
we talked about Oktagon. We'll talk about Oktagon in a little bit with Denis as well. I think. It's a good route. If you look at Will Fleury there, if they're interested, my argument for bringing James into Oktagon would be if they were interested in bringing a show to Ireland, he'd be the perfect candidate, to put bums in seats there as well, along with Will, maybe Denis as well. And maybe if you sign a couple of other fighters too. Now, they've tried the UK and Ireland route before. It didn't work out for them. But, if they're looking to go down that avenue again, it might be a good choice. I think, the obvious choice is the Contender Series. And I think, Andy, before I let you in there, it's like with the Contender Series, and obviously we talked about, the negative sides of that, and that's, on the financial side, you're not going to get paid that much. But James is in a unique situation where I feel that he has had some good paydays, from the Bellator times, and I would like to think he has a little bit of money in the bank account that he can afford. Maybe it's strange. It's a strange route to go where you're probably going to take the worst kind of contract or the worst paycheck that you ever had to sign for the biggest promotion. I think James is worth much more than going in on a 10-10 contract to the UFC. I definitely think, his ability, his star potential is definitely, in my opinion, I'd like to see him get more than that basic 10-10 if he was to go through the Contender Series. And that's kind of piggybacks off Caoilte's point, and that, probably would be more beneficial to him to kind of just get signed straight up to the promotion.
My ears pricked up when you mentioned Oktagon there, because the wheels started turning, and it would be an absolute crime to put a fighter and a prize fighter and a showman like James Gallagher, who we've seen have the 3 Arena on wheels rocking, walking into a soulless, empty UFC Apex where there are no fans whatsoever, versus when you think about Oktagon, I mean, albeit they're very specific markets, but the success that they are having, the crowds, the stadium shows, the outdoor events, the indoor events, like the pageantry, the fireworks, the walk, everything that they're doing right now, like a type of fighter like James Gallagher and a showman like James Gallagher is much more suited to the likes of an Oktagon, or you remember like the KSW ones where they have the fighters coming out and they're in these big was it Chris Fields was in the big cages and stuff. Like that's what James, like, to go back to the old school, like, I mean,
the Jimmy show.
My time, like,
the Pride show, stuff, isn't it?
That's the Jimmy show. Like, that's what you want to see from a James Gallagher fight night. You don't want to see, okay, here's a fighter in bland, nondescript clothing who looks the exact same as every other fighter.
You're not allowed to bring his fucking Irish flag. You're not allowed to bring your Ireland flag out to the cage with you on some occasions and there. But
so, well, yeah, like, it would be great to see him in Contender Series and UFC and things like that. But from that perspective,
I'd be all for Oktagon. Like, he's 28 too. You could go in there and do a good stint in Oktagon as well, and then go on to the UFC after that if you really wanted to as well, and get the best of all worlds. But I think
PFL should be. I mean, I don't know what the relationship is like there. I would assume he had a very good one at the time.
Yeah.
But like, if they're going back to Belfast, I mean, look what he did in Dublin. Think what he would do in Belfast.
Yeah, 100%. So, look, Jimmy has a lot of options, like you said, Andy. I think we can round it off. I think we're all glad to see him back in action. We want to see him more back in action. I'm looking forward to seeing what is next. Maybe we'll get the chance to have a word with him and see what's next over the next couple of weeks or so. But when we're on the topic of Oktagon, I think now would be a good opportunity to squeeze on over and talk to someone who is fighting very well in Oktagon. That's Denis Frimpong, fresh off his win over Adrian Topali at Oktagon 72. Let's head on over and hear what Denis has to say about that win, becoming a dad, and a few more things as well. Now we'd like to welcome Denis Frimpong to the Auld Triangle podcast back as a guest after a very, very big win in his last fight against Adrian Topali. But we're joining you today, Denis. We got to start here on Father's Day. And what a day to be joining on. It's your first Father's Day. I know you became a dad just last weekend. We were supposed to have you on, it was 2 weeks ago actually. Now we were supposed to have you on the last podcast, and we felt, honestly, Dennis, we felt bad. We were like, we cannot take this man has just had a newborn kid and we want to take him away for an interview. So I'm glad that, you know, it worked out and the MMA gods shine upon us, because you're joining us. Obviously it'll be out a little bit after Father's Day, but you're actually joining us on Father's Day, and I'm sure you're enjoying your very first Father's Day as well. How's it going, Denis?
Yeah, it's good. It's been like I said off camera, it's been off record. It's been rewarding. It's been tough, but yeah, like there's nothing like it. There's literally nothing like it. I never thought the feeling of like my first knockout would ever be beat. Seeing your child and holding your child for the first time, and then even just like every little milestone, you know, like. It's something special. Obviously, like it's innate in us, isn't it, to feel that way about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, obviously, I can't share the experience. I'm not sure. I don't think any of the boys can either, unless they have any kids that we don't know about. But
I'd say Caoilte has a few littered around the globe somewhere.
A few little Barras going around there somewhere. Yeah. But little Cassius, that's what you call. Yeah. So inspiration there for
I think inspiration as an MMA fighter and a fan of combat sports, like I think we all know who the inspiration was and what the inspiration was behind the name. I'm just glad my wife let me pick it as a name. She liked it as well, to be fair. But yeah, obviously Cassius Clay. I don't want him to be a fighter now. I'd rather he was a brain surgeon or something like that, you know. But we'll see.
You want him to be fixing brains rather than damaging brains.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, keeping his own brain out of harm's way as well. But yeah, you know, like, look, I'll want him to train as well. I'll definitely have him training, but I don't think I want him to fight, unless obviously by the time he's 18, 20, like, you know, MMA might be changed. It might be the way like basketball or football is now, in terms of like it might be a, like, you know, more legitimate career path than it has been historically. In that case, maybe, yeah, like if he wants to go down that path. But I'd still say, like, you know, sacrificing your brain health and physical health for, you know, for money isn't really the smartest thing to do, unless you're, like, you know, supposed to be doing it. And I'd like to think that, I don't know, it's like in Rocky, isn't it, when he's like, you know, once you've been, I'd like him to grow up in a household where, like, he hasn't ever struggled, you know, and I don't want him to then go be fighting lads from fucking Cameroon and Dagestan that I've seen struggle, because it's not a fair fight, is it? Like, you know what I mean?
Would you know, when you say you don't want your kid to grow up in a world of struggle, would it be safe to say that, you know, maybe you grew up with a little bit of struggle in your life, which kind of led you down the path to being a fighter?
Yeah, 100%. Like I never grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth, you know. My parents had me quite young. We didn't really have loads of stuff growing up. I never went to bed hungry or anything like that. But like, I didn't have a lot growing up. Do you know what I mean? Christmases were not like, you know, when you come back to school after the Christmas holidays and everyone's like talking about, like, they got like a PlayStation and 15 games and all this and that, and you're just like, yeah, fucking got like a couple t-shirts and some jocks. Do you know what
I mean? Standard.
Yeah, maybe a new pair of runners. Do you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, like, not that like I fucking struggled the same way a lot of other people in the sport have struggled, but yeah, I like my kid to have. I want my kid to be spoiled. Do you know what I mean? I want to have a spoiled brat of a kid. I want my kid to be like that kid that's just like has the newest everything. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, not be like not appreciative of where they're at, but like still never want for anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Just mentioning Father's Day and everything, you were celebrating Father's Day. You also celebrated your dad today. I saw the Instagram post that you put up on your story when you were just, a little I guess you were a little toddler at the time. You
Probably
had
like
your
5, 6.
Yeah, 5 or 6. You're in your dad's arms. He was holding you up there. Where was that picture taken? And that must have been probably around 15, 16 years ago now, maybe. More than that, I'd say.
25. I'm 30 now, mate.
30. Oh my goodness.
So
fresh
probably,
face.
Tipping on.
Probably like 25 years ago that. Believe it was in Drogheda. I could have been even younger than that, to be honest. I could have been like maybe 3 or 4 there, to be honest. It could have been in Canada. I'm not sure. Obviously there's no like background for me to like go, oh yeah, that was here or there. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Some of the lessons, you said that your dad taught you a lot of lessons, hard work and earning everything as well. Some of the lessons that you picked up from your dad I would imagine are the same kind of lessons that you will want to teach to little Cassius as well as he's growing up.
Yeah, I'd like to pass that down, just like work ethic and that as well. But I don't know. I didn't grow up like, we're talking about struggle. I didn't grow up in the same sort of struggle my dad grew up in. Do you know what I mean? So like my dad grew up in Africa. So like, and in a different time as well. So it's not like he looks at me like I'm spoiled. Do you know what I mean? But then like I'm looking around at my environment like, yo, I had it tough. But then, yeah, you always want to just level up, don't you? You want the next generation of your lineage to sort of be better off than you were, better off than your dad was, better off than his dad was. That's sort of
everybody is like that, Dennis. It's that parental evolution. I think that you want just the best for your kids. You learn good lessons, and you try not to maybe lean into some of the bad lessons that you learned maybe growing up too, and feeding along.
Break some cycles and also like, yeah, still instill good work ethic, good values, good morals. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
100%. Look, speaking of work ethic, values, everything like that. I mean, the work ethic that you've been putting into your career, I really feel definitely this year, and obviously you have a couple of great wins as well, but I really feel this year, Dennis, you're getting your due credit for the work that you have been putting in for years and years of sacrifice in the gym. Obviously your win over Robin Frank, was a phenomenal win, and then against Adrian Tapali in the last fight, phenomenal win as well. Do you feel that like you're finally coming into your prime as a fighter, and we're seeing the results inside in the cage? We've seen it. We've seen it in the past too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to belittle your past performances and your past wins, but I mean, we're sitting here now on 2 really, really strong wins in a row here. It sets you up very nicely in Oktagon.
Yeah, I think obviously, like I said just there, I'm 30 now, coming into probably my martial arts athletic prime, I would say. I've been doing martial arts now 8, nearly 9 years. So sort of I think 10 years is where you hit like your martial arts skill. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, where like, they say it takes 10 years to become a black belt. So like you've been doing martial arts 10 years. That's like, I don't know, like your skill prime, should we say? No, because you always keep getting better, but like, yeah, like I feel like I'll have hit a stage then when like the gains aren't going to be newbie gains anymore. But obviously MMA, I've only been doing probably just over 3 years. So yeah, I feel like I still have a lot more to show. I still like feel I haven't peaked just yet. And I can still show a lot more. I just need the opponents to actually show that, if that makes sense. So I need like the next level of opponent, like rather than your 5-0, 7-1 prospects. I want to be fighting like your 25-5, 15-3 sort of established guys now, where I can really then catapult myself into the next level of opponents, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, absolutely makes sense, and I think you're definitely well on the way. Obviously, a big turning point in recent times would have been that loss to George Staines. Obviously, George Staines is a phenomenal fighter as well. But since then, 4 wins in a row in Oktagon now. And, you're probably on the precipice, I'd say, 1 or 2 fights away from title shot, if not already in title contention. What, after that win over to Pali, where do you kind of see yourself?
Like, I as I say, I still feel like I haven't reached the point yet where I don't know. I don't ever feel like you're ready for anything. Like, I think you just sort of get thrust into these positions. I wasn't necessarily like ready to be a dad. I wasn't ready to take on Arian. I wasn't ready to take on, you know what I mean? You just sort of like, it happens, and then you're like, right, I'm going to get ready now. Do you know what I mean? For me, I obviously am looking at the likes of like Lozan Keita, and he has this aura around him where everyone's sort of like, oh, he's so good. Everyone that's trained on him is like, oh, he's so good. Like, he's knocking everyone out. He's beating everyone convincingly. And I just think styles make fights. And I think I have the perfect style to beat him. I think what beats him is a good kicking game, distance management, footwork, and angles, being able to get off the cage, fight on the back foot. Because he's pressure, boxing, staying in that pocket, fast hands. I think I can beat him. I think I can take his shots, tire him out a bit, beat his body up and beat him. But we'll build to that. I think my next fight is sort of being lined up, I imagine. The next week or so we'll probably have something sorted. And then after that one, maybe by the end of the year, I'd like another fight to break me into the top 10. And that would put me on a 6-fight win streak in the top 10. You've got to think fight after that's got to be a number 1 contender fight, and then a title fight after that,
Yeah, it's definitely a good path to put yourself on. Let's talk about the Tapali fight for a minute, Dennis. There's a lot of heat going in to that fight, but I mean, there's kind of a lot of heat going into all of your fights. Some of it is, manufactured by yourself. You're confident, you like the shit talk. It's a part of the game. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all. And I would argue that it actually it worked an absolute treat against Tapali in the last fight, because he definitely fought emotionally in there. And ultimately, I thought, by fighting and going at that extra clip, you were able to outwork him and you were able to break him in the later stages of round 3. Was that, obviously, you're very outspoken before you go into fights, but was there an extra kind of little bit of bite in your shit talk per se going in against a guy like Tapali, who is an emotional dude? And was there method behind, the approach to the fight?
To be honest, I don't think I even went that hard on him. Like, I don't think, like, people that have seen me trash talk other people before will know that I could have gone a lot more personal. I could have gone a lot more cutting than I did. I was actually relatively respectful with him, I think. I didn't really need to get in his head. I think he fights, I don't even know if it's emotionally, but he fights hot-headedly anyway. And listen, like, he was 7-1, 7-2 now. All those 7 wins have come in the first round. So, everyone is a different type of fighter. I don't have many first round finishes, like, even an amateur, it was usually the second round or the third round where I'd finish people. I take my time, I'm methodical. And to be honest, like, besides all of that, I actually just enjoy being in there. Like, I actually enjoy people, like, I don't know, people are weird about being in there. Some people are just real scared or something. They just want to get in and get out. And, like, the longer you're in there, the more chance you might get clipped. Like, I actually enjoy the sort of thrill of being in the cage and, like, enjoying and savoring that moment. It's 15 minutes out of your life. Do you know what I mean? And, like, how many fights are you going to get in your life? 30, 40 max. Do you know what I mean? If you're Ivan Buchinger, maybe 50. But, like, yeah, there's only a limited amount of time you'll get to be in that cage in your lifetime. So enjoy it. But yeah, I knew that he'd come out fast. Obviously the shit talk might have added a bit of fuel to that fire. I said it in the face-to-face, he'd come out fast. I literally broke it down exactly how it would happen. I knew how it would happen. I did think I'd finish him towards the end of the second round, which I think he was ready. Like, he was nicely preheated and defrosted and ready to go out at the end of the second round. If I had gone on maybe another 30 seconds, he probably would have got out of there. We were in a bit of a weird position at the end of the second round anyway, like a sort of crucifix against the cage. But yeah, straight away, start of the third round, he came out, he had nothing left. He was like gasping for air, and the finish came. I just think he's, there's some guys, if you can get through that first round with them, they become a lesser fighter as the fight goes on. And I feel like I grow into the fight as the fight goes on. I come out harder in the third round than I do in the first round. So,
yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment as well. And it definitely worked in your favor in that fight. Like, obviously, I was impressed about, how cool, calm, and composed you are. Obviously, you found yourself, you're on your back for spells of round one, and obviously in sections of round two as well. But wasn't too much damage coming from Tapali's side. You were defending well, you were just remaining patient. And I would expect in your preparation, you were doing a lot of those kind of drilling, is just remaining safe and waiting for your opportunity that you could get back up onto the feet, where I would imagine that you'd feel the advantage up there as well. Obviously, you have a grappling background too. So,
do you know what? Yeah, this is like, he's been sort of, his camp have been sort of making, I won't even say excuses, but like giving reasons why he ran out of gas, he had infections in the camp and all this. Like, I went into the Robin Frank fight, which is obviously, there was only like 2 months in between. I went into the Robin Frank fight with an injury in my shoulder. I tore my AC joint the week before the fight. I fought with it, made it worse. So for the first 5 weeks out of 8 weeks of that camp, I didn't spar, I didn't grapple, and I didn't use my right arm. So I was basically doing pads, striking classes, and hitting the bag with one arm, just jabbing, working my jab, working my southpaw backhand, and working kicks, elbows with the lead hand. And only in the last 3 weeks, I started grappling, I started sparring hard, and I started throwing my right hand. So I didn't really do much grappling in the camp. I just expected that my grappling was better than his. I'll be honest, he surprised me with his grappling. His top control was a lot better than I thought it would be. But obviously, when you're going at 150 miles an hour, like, and just like intense, like complete pressure.
Well, that's what it was to me, Dennis. You know what I mean? Like, looking at the fight, like we were chatting about it, like in the group as well, and we were saying like this is going at an incredible pace. And we'd seen you going late into fights before, but we hadn't seen him. So I was curious who was going to come out the other end. I mean, it's easy to say you had this and that going on. I think everybody has stuff going on ahead of a fight, but that's what I thought was excellent about your approach to this fight, was that I think you drew that craziness out of him where he did want to go at an extra clip. And I think you did that intelligently enough, knowing that you were going to be able to last that pace more than Adrian, really.
Hey, don't get me wrong, mate. End of the first round, I was fucked, yeah. And I was like, and my coach come in the corner and he goes, how you feeling? I was like, mate, I'm fucked. But I know that that was everything he had. That was everything he had. He's fucked. End of the second round, same thing. My shoulders were burning, like my body was fucked. And my coach just came into the corner of Car Prince and goes, listen, yeah, 5 minutes left. I'll fucking carry you out of this cage, yeah, but make sure he fucking loses this fight. And in the end, I walked out of the cage. He got carried out of the cage, but I still won the fight. So
you caught an excellent and an emotional interview right after that. There was obviously a lot going on at that stage, saying, he had the injuries and stuff going into the fight, weren't, fully recovered. Little Cassius was due on that day or in around that time.
He was due like 6 days after the fight, but you know yourself at that stage, anytime,
Yeah, that must be crazy. Must be a crazy thing to have to deal with on top of everything else of going in and fighting somebody, having that going on in the background as well. I think maybe, all the emotions maybe that you were bottling up ahead of that time probably came out after the fight. And, I can understand why.
100%. Like, obviously, this is the sort of thing, like, people don't see those little bits and bobs. Obviously, my my wife, I now live in Birmingham, and I was traveling while she was obviously like 6-7 months pregnant, up to Manchester on a Monday morning, staying up there Monday, like sleeping in the gym. Do you know what I mean? And then like training Tuesday, coming back on the Tuesday evening, just going up and down the country twice a week, staying up. Like I'm away 4 days a week while she's pregnant. Do you know what I mean? So I have to thank her. Like she was so supportive with that. Like most birds wouldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like they'd be like, "Oh no, you can't be away from me while I'm pregnant. You can't be going to Germany while I'm like ready to pop." Do you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, she's a star for that. And then obviously like having all that plus the injury going into the camp and everything else, like, and then you're like staying up, you're not eating properly because you're traveling up and down the country, you're eating fucking train food. It's hard to stay on your diet. It was a lot. And then like obviously like you say, the stress of like obviously I flew over on the Wednesday of fight week, but I was up in Manchester Monday, Tuesday, flew over on the Wednesday, so I was away for that whole fight week. And in the back of my head, I'm going, fucking hell, like, you know, sod's law. I'll have cut weight, done the press conference, wake up on fight day, do me shakeout, and then like before we go to the venue, I get a call saying, "Yeah, I'm gone into labor." Do you know what I mean? Like in the back of my head, I'm thinking that's what's going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like,
of course, because any call or any text message that comes through could come with that news. Like so,
you know.
yeah,
So yeah, it was stressful, but like you said, it's just sort of when you have a fight, everything else sort of gets just shoved in the back of your brain, and all you're thinking about is someone's going to try and hospitalize me in a cage in front of my family, in front of my mates, in front of my teammates, in front of thousands of people on this date. So I have to be ready for that. And then once it's over, it just fucking all comes out. And then obviously Brian Lacey knew exactly what to ask me. They didn't need to fucking bring it out, but it is what it is.
You shouted for the bonus there. I believe that, you know, for the fight that you guys put in and for the effort that you put in and the win, the magnitude of the win, everything that had gone on, you know, I was shocked that you didn't get it.
It is what it is. Like, I mean, yesterday we just saw Carlos Vermola get a bonus for a decision win where he got battered for 2 of the rounds. You know, it is what it is.
Not about what you know, it's about who you know, maybe sometimes.
You know, yeah, we'll say no more about that, but yeah, I'm not really arsed, you know what I mean? Like, the people know who deserved the bonus. You know, that 5K would have been better in my bank account than PopX, but, you know, it is what it is. There'll be more bonuses and bigger bonuses in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I bring that up too, Dennis, because obviously, you know, you've got an extra mouth to feed now, your little Cassius, and you know, the financial side of, you know, being an MMA fighter whilst, you know, trying to raise a young family as well. You know, the fights that come next, and you know, the deals that are cut and the contracts that are coming. These are very, very important things in your life right now.
Yeah, 100%. Like, end of the day, money talks, isn't it? So I am a prize fighter. It's who pays the most or what path leads to the most money. You know, like, obviously Oktagon are looking after me now. I would say bar maybe UFC, no one really pays better. PFL might do, but again, it's tournament, isn't it? So it's like you're not guaranteed to get that money.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, we'd have to see. But I do think that when I get my new contract sent to me, once this one's finished, I should get a good offer. I should get an offer that I'm happy with, and I need an offer that like is suiting to my current life situation. Like you say, I now have a child to feed as well, so it's gonna have to make sense.
Dennis, what did you get into MMA for? Like, was it titles and kind of glory and sport and success, or is it money? And like, has that changed, I suppose, since now that you have a family?
It has changed. I initially didn't get into martial arts for money. Obviously, I got into jiu-jitsu more so when I started martial arts, and it doesn't pay. Like, even at the highest level, it doesn't pay. I was out of money. You know, I was spending money to do tournaments and fly to all sorts of places to do the Euros and New York Open and all. You know what I mean? Like, and trying buying gis, getting memberships, and all this sort of thing. I had a good job. Like, I was doing okay for money. Like, do you know what I mean? If I wanted to do it for money, like I left money to pursue something that's going to cost me money. And then obviously when I started training like in DCA and running into MMA fighters, I was like, oh, why am I paying out the hole for jiu-jitsu when like MMA fighters are getting paid decent cash? And yeah, I thought, yeah, I can do this. At the start, I was fighting amateur. I was still working full time, but in my head, I was like, right, I'll get to a level where I'm making good money, and then I'll just do it full time. And then I realized that to even get to that level, like, I need to be doing it full time. Like, even at the like higher amateur level. After the Solomon Simon fight was when I quit my full time job, because that was probably the point when I was like, the guys I'm fighting next are all going to be doing it full time. Do you know what I mean? And they're not going to be messing about. So
that's a very difficult decision to make, because like there is no money at the lower end of MMA when it comes to your first 5-10 fights, and it's great to hear Oktagon are paying, but like right now I don't really know what the best route for a fighter is anymore. As far as getting paid, because like the UFC it's Dana White's Contender Series, it's 10-10 contracts. It's unclear.
And this is the thing about 10-10 contracts. Yeah, like what they don't tell you about 10-10. People think, oh, 10-10, that's 20 grand. Sure, you fight 3 times a year, that's 60 grand a year. That's right. And you're like, yeah, $10. Okay, let's say you win that fight. You're getting about 15K in euros or pounds, you know what I mean? More or less. You're paying your gym 10%, you're paying your manager 10%. So that's already like, you're down to about 10K.
You're paying taxes on top of that too, depending on where you're fighting.
If you fight in New York, you're paying double tax. And then by the time you finish, you might have 6K left. And then you might, like, you think, oh yeah, I'll fight 4 times a year then. You're not going to fight 4 times a year, because the UFC decide when you fight. They might say, no fight for you. No fight for you for 4 or 5 months. And then you're like, right, where's the next paycheck then? And then you end up fucking doing PTs and that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I think, to be honest, the guys that are blessed are the ones that have good sponsors behind them. A sponsor that's going to give you $1 grand or 2 a month, regardless of whether you have a fight or not, and just make sure that like you can keep it going until the next fight. Do you know what I mean?
But, yeah, I was wondering like what your take on is, like your take on that is, as far as like what is the way to make money. You're talking there, but you want, understandably, you want your child to be to grow up with not wanting for anything and to be able to give them the world. But like, it is a difficult thing to do, and I imagine you're not making. I imagine it's not exactly easy right now for you.
Yeah, I'm not making mental money. Like, don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted. Like,
but so then, what's the path? Like, how do you get to that place?
Fucking keep winning fights. Keep winning fights. Do you know what I mean? Because in my head, if you keep winning the fights, the money comes eventually. And it's like one of them sports where, like, I know guys. I'm not going to name names. I know guys that are on good money in MMA, like good money where you're like, okay, like if you could do that for 5-6 years, you could get a gaff, maybe even a second gaff for yourself. Do you know what I mean? And then I think investing wise, you're if you're smart, you can make it so you don't then have to keep working after you're retired. But it doesn't come to like the later end. You just sort of have to suffer the beginning, and then when you hit that later end, when you start getting the big contracts, then you just have to milk it for what it is at that point. Do you know what I mean? But in saying that, it's a kind of sport, mate. I could fucking, touch wood, mate. I could fucking go go jiu-jitsu class tomorrow and someone could do a spazzy thing and blow me knee, and then I'm out for a year. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of them, you know. Fucking obviously, we seen what happened with twice in Irish MMA with Ian Coughlin and with Ryan Curtis, where you could get, you know. That's why I'll be honest, I'm very selective about who I spar with and who I grapple with, wrestle with, especially now, because you go with fucking some guy from certain parts of the world, I won't name them, but certain parts of the world, they don't give a fuck about you, bro. They'll just fucking spike you on your head, and you know oh, sorry, bro, sorry that I broke your neck. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, sorry, he's not gonna fucking get me walking again. Do you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I'm just very selective about that, who I train with, and that obviously injuries are gonna come, but like you can try and avoid the catastrophic ones as much as you can. Do you know?
When you're talking, obviously, when we're on the topic of finances and everything like that, and you know, Oktagon are really, you know, setting the standard in European mixed martial arts right now, Denis. You know, big stadium sellout shows, everything like that. So, you know, to me, looking from the outside in, that means that, you know, you worry about certain MMA organizations. Is their business model sustainable? Will they be around for the foreseeable future? You know, I think some big organizations, you would have questions over them. I don't think so, especially under the current market that we're dealing with, Oktagon MMA and the big shows that they're putting on. You know, I think it is sustainable for them. So would you be looking at, you know, a promotion like Oktagon as being your forever home if terms are right? Obviously, if the money is right as well.
If the money is right, 100%. But you know, end of the day, look, everyone does want to go to the UFC. I'm quite happy not to go to the UFC if they give me don't go to the UFC money. Do you know what I mean? Like if I get to a stage where UFC is knocking on the door, I'm gonna have to have a look, and you're gonna have to pay me not to go. Do you know what I mean? But I'm happy not to go, to be honest. I'm happy to be a star in Oktagon. You know, I'm happy to play in the Bundesliga. And yeah, as far as them being sustainable, I do think they are sustainable, because I'll be honest, they're not like some certain promotions are giving out tickets, free tickets and stuff like that. They're not selling out big places that they're getting, you know. It's not sustainable. It's like they're bleeding money, but they can afford to just bleed money for a while. Oktagon are selling out arenas, you know, and when they sell out, like they sold out that Eden on the weekend, 28,000 seater. If you do the maths, if you're talking like an average of 60 to 80 euro average price of a ticket, because some tickets are 250, 300, some tickets are 40 quid. You're probably looking at like you know, I don't want to talk about numbers, but if you do the maths yourself on a calculator, you're talking about big income from those sort of things. Plus they've got sponsors behind them. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd imagine the sponsors probably cover fight purses and the venue being booked. Do you know what I mean? So anything from ticket sales is probably profit, and they're doing all right. You know, all I can say is they best start turning some of that profit my way soon.
Denis, a lot of the lads in Oktagon, if you look at the likes of Carlos Famola, like they're celebrities in parts of the world that I guess we would have been aware of, and they live very good lives as a result. When you look at guys like that, do you see an opportunity for yourself to be able to make a name for yourself and I guess become a celebrity in I guess these countries in Europe and live a good life like the guys like Famola who are legends in Oktagon?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a celebrity in Europe. I want to be a celebrity worldwide, don't I? But yeah, Famola had the whole thing of, obviously he was the first Czech fighter in the UFC. So by the time he even come to Oktagon, he was already like past his prime, we'll say, and you know had already done a lot in the sport beforehand, garnered a big fan base. I would say there's now a new wave of like the Max Holzers, like myself, like the guys that are like building themselves up in the promotion in Oktagon, rather than having come from Bellator or the UFC as a big name already. like your Max Kogas and your Attila Veys and these kind of guys. Yeah, I'm not really arsed about being a celebrity, mate. As I said, like, you know, I could, as long as, you know, if I'm the champ at Oktagon and I have fucking 10K followers, but I'm getting paid well as the champ, I'm happy. Do you know what I'm saying? But yeah, with money comes, I suppose, the celebrity. With celebrity comes the money. With titles come all that, and with all of that comes sponsors as well, and everything else sort of, yeah, snowballs, I suppose. But the main thing is, on my end, all I have to do is just keep winning fights impressively. That's it. Selling fights and winning fights.
Just to move off, I guess, the fighting bit slightly. I've noticed recently you've very strong with faith become very important to you, and you know, it's a very strong part of, I guess, I see on social media when you're speaking interviews and all sorts. Is that something that's always been very important to you, or is this very new?
Be honest, before I reverted to Islam, I was maybe not an atheist, but I was probably agnostic, would say. You know, I was very not religious at all. Didn't really believed that maybe there was a higher power, but didn't really believe that it, you know, in worship or in, one sec, just get this charger in worship or in sort of in established religion. But yeah, as that's obviously become a part of my life, my outlook on a lot of things has changed. My motivation has changed, not just for fighting and like what I'm doing in my life, but also for like what I want in life in general. So yeah, it's become a very strong part of my moral guide, I suppose, my moral compass and my belief system.
Can I ask how it came about?
Be honest, yeah, when I was in Ireland, I never got the opportunity to. Obviously, I'd met Muslims, but I never got the opportunity to really connect with a lot of Muslims. There wasn't a lot of people in my circle, I suppose, that were Muslim. From having moved over to England, I met a lot more Muslims. I saw the way that they lived. I saw the sort of fraternity that it brought. I saw that, you know, they a lot of them live by example, and like a lot of the stuff that I would have thought about Islam living in Ireland, I realized when I moved over here and I started meeting Muslims for real, that a lot of it is out of context or propaganda, to be honest. And yeah, like, changed my outlook on a lot of things. I started meeting a lot of other people who were reverts, so like white British people who had become Muslim, white British women who had become Muslim, and like I worked with a few of them, and you know what I mean. And it just changed my outlook on like what I thought Islam was, or what I thought Islam was like. Does that make sense? Read into it, and yeah, the rest is history, I suppose. It was a process, though. It wasn't just like an overnight thing. It was like probably over a couple of years, I slowly moved towards that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Good for you. I'm glad that, you know, you found something that's had a benefit to your life as well, and you know, you can provide a good example for other people too. Thanks so much for your time. We don't want to keep you too much longer. I got to finish with this one. We want to try and get a bit of information out of you here, Dennis. You teased about what possibly might be next. You teased that there might be a fight coming up pretty soon. Now, I know you have to keep your cards close to your chest, but can you give us anything at all?
I wanted to fight in September anyway. It's looking like potentially September is when I'm going to be out. I'm not going to say who, but it's an exciting fight. It's an exciting fight for the fans, fan-friendly fight, as long as he wants to keep it fan-friendly, shall we say.
Who do you want to fight, Dennis, on this?
I want to fight Loza and Caoilte, don't I? But yeah, obviously we're building our way towards that.
I'm looking at the rankings here now, the top 10 rankings, and you can look at them on OktagonMMA.com. Are we looking at?
They need serious updating.
Yeah, they definitely do. I don't see your name there, and I think that needs to change for sure. But would I be looking at a name on that top 10 list that could be a potential opponent in September?
There is a top 10 opponent that wants to fight me, that has agreed to fight me, but he is out until later on in the year, and I don't want to wait that long. So I said, let me get a little tune-up fight. Let me smoke a guy first, get the baby, the dad fat off me, get back in the gym, get a little tune-up, and then go later in the year then, and go it like I like to do like my camps back to back a little bit. So I do a camp, I have like a week of like rest, recovery, and then get straight back into it. So I'm building off the peaking that I did in the camp before. So yeah, hopefully that'll work out nicely. That'll be 4 fights in the year, wouldn't it? And 4 wins in the year. And then we're looking at, as I say, next year, maybe late next year, title shot. Who knows? Well,
Denis, can you give us the date? I see they have a flat out schedule in September, so they're going to the Ostrava on the 6th.
I don't have a set date yet. There's a few dates in September, but yeah, I want the German card in September. That's all I'm going to say. That's the most I'm going to say now.
The Festallen, is it?
I'm not sure. I actually, with that, I actually don't know. So yeah, I expect a call next. Well, I suppose it's Sunday now. This coming week. They've obviously been quite busy with Eden with pullouts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm expecting this week. I should get a call and we should sort something out.
Denis, obviously, we opened up the podcast with saying you want to kind of create a good example for your son Cassius. Are we going to tone down the shit talking a little bit now? Is Dad Frimpong going to tone it down, or is he going to tone it up, Denis? Huh?
I'm just gonna and I think I have been a little bit less grating, shall we say, on abrasive in terms of what I'm talking shit about. But no, I'm still gonna talk shit. Like, that's just talking shit is just part of Irish culture, isn't it? Like, you have to be able to slag each other off. Like,
definitely does. It definitely is. It definitely is. Well, all jokes aside, honestly, you're setting the perfect example for your son. Congratulations once again on becoming a dad. We're going to let you go enjoy the rest of Father's Day back home with your son, with your wife. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us, Denis. Always a pleasure. We're looking forward to hearing some confirmation on that next fight in September. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you in around that time as well, my man.
Nice one, mate. Appreciate it for having me on, lads. Yeah.
Cheers, Denis.
Thanks, Denis. All right, boys, let's take a look at some of the rest of the action that was taking place. Let's stop off at UAE Warriors real quick, Caoilte. Let's start with the professional debut of Fufu Fares, who went over there and won a very comfortable unanimous decision versus Hafid Bandari. And, a guy we've talked about before, a guy I was looking forward to making his professional debut, and one that I believe will be very successful in the professional ranks. He's got the style. He showed he has the style in this win. Exciting, move forward, attack-minded style. And he was super comfortable throughout this fight and very impressive on his professional debut. I think the years, you followed him for years, as we all have, through the amateur ranks, and, the hard work that he's put in over the last couple of years, really on show here for a guy who was making his professional debut. He looked like he had more than a couple of fights inside the professional cage coming in here. Looked very comfortable, in control, and pulled off a very, very good win, Caoilte. Yeah,
it was flawless for a pro debut. All you could ask for is maybe a finish, but in terms of how he performed throughout 3 rounds, it was incredible. The range management of even knowing when to move just a little step back to get away from some of the shots that were coming at him, picking his shots perfectly, destroying the leg with the calf kick was just incredible. And what he's known for, and what we know, what we see very often from him, is the movement. Like, the movement and footwork around is just exceptional. And massive credit to him for how he performed, especially in the first round. And we got to see a glimpse of the grappling then later in the fight. When it came to the 3rd round, I thought he was actually going to get the finish with a rear naked choke. So we got to see all aspects of his game in that fight, and just brilliant. Fair play to him, because you couldn't really ask for a better pro debut, and I think he really made a statement with that. And he was I think he was chatting to the camera or something at one point in the third round. He put on a performance. I think that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, he definitely did. Obviously, you mentioned, Caoilte, about the finish, and I think finishes will come, but when you're looking at your first fight, Andy, in there, getting that 15 minutes under your belt, the first time when you're under there, you're experiencing it, you'll see how your body reacts to certain situations. Getting that time under your belt, especially as an early professional, is very, very important. And, he'll grow and learn from that. And, I think that's a good thing, even though the finish didn't come and the fighters would be disappointed. I don't think he definitely didn't look disappointed that he won. When you win that comfortably by decision as well, it's good to get that time under your belt, I feel, too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the confidence that I saw from him was very impressive. Like it was kind of hard to see on the broadcast, because they basically started the fight had started before they'd actually gone to the actual action in the cage. They had a graphic over it, so he threw a Jorge Masvidal flying knee to open, and that's the very first thing he did in his professional debut. Now, obviously, he's 20 odd fights or something at amateur, but he looked to me like a 10-fight professional in that cage there. And everything that you have talked about, I just thought he looked brilliant. Like the composure that he had, he looked like I don't want to say he looked like he was sparring, but he looked like he had the kind of comfortability of someone who's sparring.
Where does the confidence come from when you're in the scenario like that? The confidence comes from, I feel, just being in total control of this fight. When you're fighting, sometimes the fight, sometimes I would think, the fight is, I want the fight to be exactly here. Sometimes you can be on your back, or you could be in a mount, or you could be back, and you're like, fuck, I do not want to be here. And sometimes, it can take away from your game when somebody else has the ability to take the fight where they want it to go. I think Fufu Fares was in that position in this fight, completely in control the whole fight, dictated where the fight went, dictated where the fight wanted to go, to call it leading the dance. And he definitely led the dance throughout the 15 minutes, in my opinion. I guess that's where a certain level of confidence can come from too, and it was definitely on show there. Definitely.
And he also was threatening at all times. So even when, I would say 95% of the time, he was doing everything that you just said there. There were a couple of times where Bandari looked to take him down, and he was just immediately threatening subs, whether it was the guillotine in the first round, I think it was a ninja choke, and in the second round, he threatened a rear naked choke towards the end or midway through the third round. He just was constantly threatening, constantly attacking, which was great to see. Now, look, there was definitely an experience gap here between himself and Bandari, but that, yes, there was, and yes, it showed. So that certainly added up. So look, it was phenomenal. I thought the broadcast team rightly highlighted it as one of the most impressive performances on the entire card, and it's going to be very exciting. And to your point, I think it's a very valuable 15 minutes where he was able to just get a lot of experience in there, showcase his skill set, make a statement in the professional ranks, and fighting on UFC Fight Pass too. So I thought it was a really, really brilliant night for Fufu Fares and for the SVG Cork team.
Yeah, indeed. Also on the card, another person who picked up a valuable 15 minutes was Omran Chaaban from Team KF. Picked up a unanimous decision win over Gunther in Gunza. I think, and I'll stick with you, Andy, for this one as well. I think, valuable 15 minutes in terms of fighting against an opponent who, I said call him this off camera, so I'll call him on camera. I'll stand on business here. He was a bit of a show pony in there. You know what I mean? He wants to taunt. He wants to try and get in Omran's head. I think, he kind of realized the early stages in this fight that Omran Chaaban was the much better fighter. So he had to try and play a couple of mental games. And that's, difficult for a guy like Omran Chaaban as well to kind of, get in there and fight against a guy like that. But he did quite well. He worked behind his jab. Just similar enough to Fufu, just was in complete control for the majority, all of this fight, not for the majority of the fight. I would say for all of this fight. Obviously, the finish didn't come as well, but this guy that he was fighting in Gunza wanted to kind of be more of a showman than a fighter here. And, obviously you need two to tango. And, I think Omran would have been maybe better off if there was a guy in there that, put the fight to him a little bit more. But look, you can only beat who's in front of you, Andy. And that's exactly what Omran did. Moves to 7-1 and another impressive win. And, keeps the undefeated streak of Team KF alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you call him a show pony. He's delusional, borderline arsehole. It's kind of the words that I would just to be blunt, like just kind of trying to start fights after you've just been beaten from bell to bell for 15 minutes, and then now you're trying to start fights with your opponent is a bit bizarre. But look, that's also probably I'm not a fighter. You probably have to be a bit delusional to get in there and to be fighting.
There's the difference between being delusional and being idiotic, I think.
Yeah,
but he was definitely the latter.
To be fair to him, he possessed some really solid power, and he was throwing with serious intent. Now, Omran did a great job. Like, there was big wing and overhands rights that were coming his way. He did a great job of kind of using his jab, fighting off the back foot, fighting on his bike for periods of the fight, and then turning up the gears as it went on to press forward. Ngunza was very much pressing the action in the opening exchange of the first round, trying to back Omran up, trying to land big bombs, but he just never really was able to. Omran did a brilliant job of sticking the jab up at the pace, using his feints, hit and not get hit. And I thought that he just looked really, really good. Landed some big high kicks as well. And I think it was the second round. Took him down in the third. The third round, he spent a lot of time on the back, but it looked like it was very difficult to see. I don't know if he was complaining about the gloves being held. I don't know if Ngunza was doing that or not. Like, I'm not going to say he was. The commentary team were kind of commenting on that they weren't sure if it was difficult to see, but there was kind of a bit of a stalemate with Omran on his back. But then eventually he freed the arm and landed a lot of shots from top. One thing I didn't understand at all was there was a 29-28 scorecard in this. This was as clean a 30-27 as I've seen in MMA. So I'm a bit perplexed by that one. I don't know what fight that judge was watching, but yeah, a solid, another solid win. He was obviously coming in here as the UAE Warriors Arabian champion. This was like a UAE Warriors Africa versus Arabia card, so there was no title on the line. So it'll be interesting to see. It's another one where I feel like Paddy McCarry and Omran are a bit of a similar position where they've fought on the Ultimate Fighter and now have had a couple of fights since then where, maybe the level of competition is it's a bit night and day compared to what they were facing previous and in the Ultimate Fighter. So to our previous conversation at the start of the episode, it'll be interesting to see who gets opportunities and where and why and all these things, and we probably won't get all those answers, but
yeah, it was actually where I was going to go with Caoilte, just trying to bring him in there just for his opinion on that, because we've got to get things moving here for the likes of Omran. Like, obviously we're talking about Omran as well, but I would definitely say the same for Paddy McCurry as well, both of them in similar enough positions here. And I know Chris is calling for a shot at the Contender Series, and I would agree. That's what seems to be the path that they want to go down. So I think he's more than ready and has been more than ready. There was a time, guys, where if you picked up a win on the Ultimate Fighter House, you were getting signed to the UFC. So obviously those times have changed now, and Omran has definitely paid his dues and definitely deserves that crack in the Contender Series. I'd love to see him go straight in. Even I think he's good enough to go straight in, but that doesn't seem to be the route that the UFC wants to follow with most fighters these days.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him on the finale card, because that's what they used to do, and it was great because it's nearly like a second opportunity to win a contract. You get your debut, and it's an opportunity to maybe impress and stay on with the UFC afterwards. But that's no longer the case anymore. And I think since they had wins in the both Paddy and Omran have had wins in the Ultimate Fighter House, they've gone on, and there's been evident skill gaps in the fights they've had since, where their level is above, and we're just waiting for them to have a test against this better competition, really. And I think the Contender Series is perfect. The UFC is aware of them. They've proven how good they are inside the Ultimate Fighter, and then they've proven that their level is above who they're matched against outside of the UFC. So they're kind of, I don't see what else there is to do except put them on the Contender Series, or just keep doing these type of fights until maybe a late notice call comes up or the UFC finally pick up the phone. But that seems like the most surefire way of getting in right now is getting that Contender Series call up. And I think I'd be surprised if neither Paddy or Omran were on it, or either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think like as Andy mentioned earlier on, I think the next couple of weeks are going to tell us, we've started to see some fights being matched up, and we'll hear a couple of more being matched up as well. Which brings me on to another fighter who could be in prime candidate to go maybe somewhere on the Contender Series as well, and that's Nikolai Grozdev, who picked up the featherweight title over at WOW 20, Andy. And picked it up very, very impressively too. Dominated the fight whilst landing a lovely left hook in round 4 to get the fight finished and getting the TKO win. It was a good over and back fight at times. His opponent Ignacio Campos, was a good fighter. Showed he's dangerous throughout the fight, but it was a really impressive performance here by Grozdev to pick up the win.
Yeah, I thought that the fact that the way that he finished the fight will massively help him here, because this was, it was a very close fight that kind of seemed to be playing out of a striker versus grappler for the vast majority of it. And although Nick was dominating in the control, there wasn't a lot of damage that he was landing in a couple of the rounds, even though he was in, kind of in the dominating position in the grappling area. Like, he wasn't landing a lot of ground and pound. There weren't submission attempts, and especially I think it was rounds 2 and 3, Campos had landed some really nice shots at the beginning of the round and the end of the round where, it would have been interesting to see, had this gone to a decision, what the scorecards would have looked like, because optically you think, Jesus, Grozdev was dominating that round, but really, was he landing the damage? Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if rounds 2 or 3 if judges were giving them to Campos. Now, that being said, really impressive performance here, and the fact that after 4 rounds, it seemed that Grozdev had kind of lulled him into this false sense of security, where, or maybe tired him out with the grappling as well, to a point where he was then able to, I think the fight was stood up by the ref in the 4th, and then immediately Grozdev started to up the pace and start to put the pressure on for probably the first time in the fight. It was more so Campos putting the pressure on in the striking department, whereas now Grozdev was taking the front foot. He was starting to land. He landed a couple of good, nice shots to the body, and then he just landed an absolute peach of a straight right, which landed on the guard of Campos. Campos had shelled up, and a most perfectly placed left hook that sent him the jaw like wrapped around his head. The eyes rolled back to the back of the head. He looked like he was in serious danger. Dropped the canvas, followed up with the hammer fist, and there was a little bit of conversation. Did the ref step in too early? I don't think he did. I think it was a really good stoppage, albeit that Campos was protesting. But that was a clean shot and a highlight reel finish for Grozdev. So that takes him now to 10-2. He's got a 100% finish record. I believe he has 6 first-round finishes, and I think he's won his last 4 fights, maybe 3 if not 4. And undefeated now in WOW FC as well. So he's now their featherweight champion. He's after fighting on UFC Fight Pass. The guy is, in theory, a prime candidate for Dana White's Contender Series. So again, as we've talked about this episode, a lot of guys who by right can throw their name in the mix here. And Slick Nick is doing some great things over in WoW.
Yeah, 100%. Very well said. Other action that I'd like to touch on real quickly, we had a win for it was a fight that ended in no contest between Ilias Buliad and Robin Fazil. A strike to the back of the head by Buliad caused a scenario where Fazil was unable to continue. The fight was called a no contest due to an accidental illegal strike. A fight actually that we didn't have down here but was supposed to take place. Did anybody hear what happened to the Asela Hughes fight? Because it was supposed to happen this past Thursday, and it was on the card. It was on Tapology, and next thing, it didn't happen. We were breaking down the card, Sean and I, last week, and next thing, we didn't see Asela Hughes on the website. So did that fight fall off? Did anybody hear anything about that fight? I didn't.
I did not.
Yeah.
I went looking. I couldn't see it.
No idea.
Yeah, no crazy. Idea. But it was unfortunate because, obviously Asela is a very exciting guy and we hadn't seen him in quite some time. So, hopefully that gets rebooked and we get to see him out again fairly soon. Other action that we did have, obviously, Caoilte over an Evolution Fighting Championship, a card that was run down in Tullamore. Kieran Davern put it on. Had a couple of fights on it as well. It was kind of a mixed bag of fights. I think we had some grappling, we had some K1 and some MMA on it as well. Any highlights or standouts that you'd like to mention from that card?
Just the Shane Dunnies, they rate him quite highly in air grappling. They put a title on the line. He looked very good in his win where he got a finish. Paul Keane had a good win as well. He looked quite good from what I saw that fight. And then the other one I remember was I don't know if you should call it a barn burner, because it was a bit more of a slobber knocker, to be honest, from what I've seen. To go back to the WWE catchphrases of Aaron Lorenzo and Dean O'Driscoll that went the distance. But my God, some of the clips from that I've watched are it looked wild. So one that certainly looked like it delivered for the crowd anyway in terms of excitement. But Aaron Lorenzo got the win there. I think he was making his debut, amateur debut, fighting out of Lokomotiva BJJ, and Dean O'Driscoll that we're well familiar with from the amateur scene as well, and he's been quite established on the scene for a while. And then I think there's a training partner we were told about who had a submission victory. So Bartek, I'm going to butcher this, Bartekowski. Browner can correct me on this one, but a training partner, Paul Brown, we were told to have a look at. And got the win via submission in the first round in his amateur debut, 73 kg catchweight. And he's no spring chicken either. He's making his amateur debut quite like in his late 30s, I believe. Once again, I could be wrong. I don't have it written down. Didn't do my notes for that one. But fair play for him as well.
Paul Brown told us he was 48 years old.
Yeah. 48. There we are. Jesus Christ. Unbelievable. You know, you're never too old, as they say. You're never too old.
Fair play. I know a couple of other amateur fights went on. Shane Mullen was over at Tower.
Pro debut.
Cage fighting, for pro debut, sorry. That was a professional bantamweight. We had an amateur flyweight fight. Nate the Great Kelly was on that card as well against Antonio Toromino. I personally didn't see that fight. Any thoughts on that fight, lads? Did anyone get to see? I saw Nathan Kelly's snippet of his fight, all right, but didn't see anything from Shane Mullins.
No, I haven't seen that either. It was it's like a lot of Irish in the middle of June. It was an SPG holiday over to Italy, where I believe they picked up 2 titles. Tadeo Pagliaricio won the flyweight title there. I think Walter Cogliandro, I believe, won title there as well, and then both Shane winning his pro debut, and Nate Kelly, Nate the Great, winning against Antonio Toromino. So clean sweep for SPG over in Italy. Tower Cage Fighting won in Pisa.
Great setup. Outdoors looked unbelievable. You'd say the heat as well. I'd say the heat would have been interesting, but it was like Premier, but just a bit more, just in Italy basically, and no rain.
Last weekend, or last time since we've been on, it was on June 7th. We had big wins for Amy Scully and Almas Oliver at FCC 42 in Liverpool. Amy Scully picking up the strawweight belt against Anna Schuckman, and she became a double champion there, I believe, flyweight and strawweight champion there as well, and one of the first fighters to do that at FCC.
I think I'd seen she was the first female champion in FCC history.
Really, as well, right? Nice.
Yeah.
Creating history there, Amy was as well. And after
as
that fight,
as was Almas Oliver.
Almas Oliver picking up another belt as well. He picked up the bantamweight title with the second round KO over Reese Parr.
Fourth round, was it?
Where
am I wrong?
Based off the notes here, guys, that's all I can say. Was I'm trying to throw.
He was.
You went under the bus there or anything like that. But, I go all Ron Burgett. You know me, guys.
First round.
At
least we both in the first, second, third, fourth round.
It's an absolute peach.
But it was a great win for all jokes aside. A great win for.
I won't lie. I tried going to look for the full fight, and then it wasn't on Fight Pass, so I've only seen the finish. But yeah, an absolute peach of a shot, and I believe. Now, I don't think this is an official title, but I saw that the lads up in FAI were putting this out where they're saying he's the first ever 4 nations amateur champion, by which I think they mean he has won titles in Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales as an amateur. So I haven't fact checked that, but it sounds great.
That'd be a nightmare to fact.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive.
We leave that one with you, Caoilte, to fact check.
Yeah. Going back to 2009 and some random lad has just won one everywhere. But I believe it. I believe it all the same. Creating history. Unbelievable. And probably makes... He's probably surprised if he's not going pro next after that. Like, that was an incredible finish. He looked fantastic in there.
Yeah, I think pro, I'd like to see him go. He's got to be damn close to making that jump now. You know, there's not too much more left for him to do there, picking up titles left, right, and centre. So
he's a beast. Seventh title as an amateur.
Yeah, crazy. Another exciting prospect coming out of FAI as well. So fucking credit to the crew, to the boys up there. He might have Shando out again with the gold chains and the cigars as well in time to come.
Yeah, I just jump back to Amy Scully. I saw some bit weird as well, where so she was supposed to be fighting on Clan Wars.
Yes.
Now I reached out to Clan Wars and they had said that it was due to medical clearance, that she wouldn't be medically cleared in time. Now that is a different story to what I've been told by Amy, and what Amy put up on her story, that it just seemed to be that the fight had been cancelled as a result of her fighting on another show. So it's a bit unclear, I would say, as to what the story is there. But yeah, bizarre. I thought my instinct was, this just seems odd, because I feel like we've seen a lot of other fighters compete in within that period of time previously. So
yeah.
I'm a bit confused by that one.
It's unfortunate. I think unfortunate for Amy, and I mean, Amy bring a lot of attention to that card as well, on top of everything else that's on it as well. But yeah, a little bit of mixed messaging going on there. But you know, it's unfortunate that Amy doesn't get to spin out. But if that's the route they're choosing to go down, that's their own choice that they can make, I guess. So yeah, be interesting to see what comes from that, which probably won't be Amy Scully fighting for Clan Wars again, I would imagine, but we'll see. Never know. Never say never, I guess, lads. Anything else that we can talk about? A couple of upcoming items that we can talk about. Matis Sarahovs is coming back to fight on the Brussels card on July 5th. That's against Maho Campanella. Not too sure about this Campanella fella. Do you know much about him, Caoilte?
Not at all. No, I've not looked into him at all yet. It's a complete random one. They're stacking that Brussels card, though. I think there's about 20 fights, so doing research for that's going to be fun.
Indeed, it is. We have a lightweight title fight coming up for our guy Dom Norcus, who takes on Davle Karatiev. That's at Inferno FC 9 on June 21st. So this just coming up this coming weekend as well. Any information on where will we be able to easily watch that, lads? I haven't had the chance to kind of dig in and see. Hopefully we'll be able to get it on YouTube or a stream somewhere. I always, if Dom Norcus is fighting, I'm watching. Do we know anything about that? How we can see that? No, nothing. Keep an eye on our social media accounts, folks, and we'll definitely get that information for you. We have Elite Fighting Championships. It's taking place on June 21st as well. Adam Darby back in action on the June 27th Cage Warriors 190 card. A guy who was supposed to be fighting on that card, Stephen Costello. That fight is off. He had that on his story today. I know he had a fight schedule that got pulled. He was hoping to get another opponent. That has not worked out for him. That's unfortunate. I know I was excited to see his Cage Warriors debut. Hopefully they get another opponent and they get him on one of the upcoming cards. They've got a couple coming up over the next couple of weeks and months. So yeah, all said and done for that. Anything else, lads? Did I miss anything before we wrap it up?
We did. As a huge fan of The Ultimate Fighter myself,
Yes,
I'll be glued in. But seriously, I'll be glued in for Andreas Binder. So they put out a little trailer, a little teaser. Now, I don't know if they're just pulling the wool over our eyes or what. We'll have to, I suppose, tune in to find out. But it seems like they're at least teasing that there may be some drama leading into the fight with Andreas's weight cut, which obviously would be very unfortunate if that is the case. He's fighting at 170. Obviously, he had the weight issues and the weight misses at 155, and there was the opportunity for PFL. And of course, he's since moved up to welterweight and has been making weight consistently there. But hopefully, he's made weight here in The Ultimate Fighter. I'm not going to give any spoilers.
You know Stevenson, the spoiler
actually
Stevenson.
No, I don't know the result.
You tried to ruin the last one as well. I knew you know all the results too. I had to put the warnings out.
I don't know the result, but I've heard that it is wild.
Yeah. Well, on the very first episode, there was a very brief snippet, and that was a snippet of like Andreas inside the cage. So that means that we know that he definitely got inside the cage anyway. So
good detective work there now.
Good detective O'Neill. And look at if I'm going to go full detective, I'm going to say he had a face that was covered in blood too. So you know that he's probably going to be in a bloody war as well. If my eyesight is correctly now, I mean you can call me up on that. Of course, that this I don't know.
This may be out after this is coming out.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was told that this was the bloodiest fight that Dana White has ever seen.
There you go.
Now, has he seen Nicholas Dalby versus Ross Houston? I do not know.
I would argue BJ Penn versus Joe Daddy Stevenson was probably up there as well, but that's a blast from the past. That was good. But there's been a lot of bloody fights, and hopefully things go well for Andreas. Obviously, we'll break down that fight in great detail on the next episode of the Auld Triangle. But it's great to have Andreas in there representing Ireland, representing SBG Charlestown, putting on, making a name for himself, going in there. You have Dana White talking about you, and hopefully, genuinely, I don't know anything. I know the lads don't know anything. Hopefully, the result goes his way, and we get to see him in there again. And hopefully, the whole experience was great for him. We will talk to him, I think, once the season is over. I think like we did with the other lads too as well. So shout out to Andreas there. And I think that just is about time for us to kind of wrap up episode 86, Andy.
I've been trying to look for this feckin' Inferno link here for the last couple of minutes. It's nowhere to be seen so far. So we'll put it out.
Yeah, we'll reach out to Chris. We'll try and get some.
Yeah, there's got to be some way to watch this. Hopefully.
They ain't making what we need is Facebook Live. If there's no, we need someone to Facebook Live that. We need
Cian Caoilte,
Instagram.
Cian Caoilte or Shero or someone like that. Let's
just see Tom Keogh's finish of what's his name? Dan O'Toole. Tasty one. Tasty one. I see you do that, Sarge. You're not.
Yeah, I should.
Combat sport connoisseur Andy Stevenson there.
Connoisseur.
It was an elbow finish, was it?
Muay Thai. It was no. It was a hook, I believe, and then he dropped and it was a bit of a soccer kick follow up almost, but it was waved off. I didn't see the full fight. It looked like it had been stopped, so maybe he'd been dropped already because it was the first round, but it looked like he'd been maybe risen to his feet, reset, and then followed up with a big hook finish. It was a big fight, big domestic fight. So
maybe we'll have to watch the Auld Triangle Irish Muay Thai podcast instead, lads. Maybe
I love an L domestic scrap, so let's get that in there now.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening, subscribing, leaving us a 5-star review. If you've not done that, please do over on Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast. We're also give us an old like. Subscribe on YouTube, share with a friend if anybody is in Irish mixed martial arts that you think might be interested in our product and in our podcast. Please let them know. We always appreciate the support, and we're always looking for more support, more followers, more ratings. Andy?
Can I give out a Listener of the Week award? This is probably the first and last Listener of the Week award, but Andy McCarroll.
Yes.
Fantastic. Amidst my political...
when are you going on Vincent Brown?
Twitter. He's a great man, Vincent Brown.
He is a great man.
Maybe that could be me. I could be
Andy Brown. Is that what we call you now?
I'd be too afraid to ask hard questions. I wouldn't do that now.
You're not afraid.
But he basically just was like, this lad's talking like that. You want to hear what he says in this podcast? Or trying to boost our numbers, which I've very much appreciated. So hopefully none of them actually listened, or at least follow me now, because they probably all hate me. So maybe that wouldn't be good. But it's the thought that counts. Listener of the Week, Andy McCarroll.
Shout out Andy. Shout out everybody else that listens as well. And shout out Caoilte de Barra, who's going to see us out.
Gurmín Mápih agus Longafall.